Welcome to this Sunday, March 19th session of the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and the beautiful beach lifestyle here on the Outer Banks. And this is a gorgeous shot I got from the beach, 2nd Street Beach Access in Kitty Hawk earlier today with a stiff northeast wind, some chop off the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean, gorgeous green, which doesn't quite pop as much in this image as it did in real life, and amazing blue skies just stretching overhead in this colorful blanket. I'm told it's called Carolina blue. I just it looks like just this almost science fiction blue. I've never seen such blue in my life. And um, got down to the beach, got this video of the waves and observation for you guys. We're looking north in this camera shot at Avalon Pier. You can see the pier off in the distance and the white caps rolling in across the sandbar and waves breaking. These waves in the range of 1 to 2 foot likely, maybe a couple of 3 foot waves coming in. And then waves across the Outer Banks today in the 1 to 3 foot range for the most part, although the swell coming in is rather larger. It's not lining up very well, and there's a lot of wind to chop up the waves right now. And these winds are expected to die down. It's expected to get cold tonight behind a front. And then over the course of this week, it's expected to warm up and the waves might be pretty good. By midweek, 2 to 4 foot, 3 to 4 foot, might get out into the water as the air temperature is expected to warm up. Not certain about the ocean, but we do expect to see a high pressure system get offshore and a big bow of just warm, moist air move up from that warmer than normal Gulf of Mexico and blanket the Outer Banks. And so we might get into the water on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which could be pretty fun. But in any case, right now, pretty choppy and sloppy, um, I guess is the is the overall word for today. I'm not sure if I titled this wave report correctly, so I might have to go back and edit it for you guys. But in any case, um, we've got a green ocean with a north wind chop, which is going to be the title for the wave report, if I didn't get it in there. All right, so let's get down to the weather and climate analysis. We do provide a weather and climate analysis for the lower 48 and for the North Atlantic and for the near Arctic region as part of our wave report because all of the weather and climate stuff going on in these regions affects the Outer Banks, and occasionally we get out to a broader global picture. But right now we've got a big old frontal boundary off the US East Coast. It's got a low pressure anchored up near Newfoundland, and this massive front just trailing on down. Look at this thing, just trailing on down off the US East Coast, down past the tip of Florida, and down into the Gulf of Mexico, um, digging into that warm, moist spot over the Gulf. It's yeah, a lot of energy there for storms, should they form. We haven't had too much in the way of severe weather, thankfully. And then the front draping across the Gulf Stream right now, tapping into some of that energy. You can see the intensity in the cloud tops there. And then for the West Coast, we've got another storm system moving in, providing rough weather for the coastline and some rains for central California getting up into the mountains. And then the atmospheric river looks like it's ready to disgorge another volley of moisture into California tomorrow, although generally it does look like the intensity of these storms is going to drop off from what we have recently experienced for California over recent days. And Now, moving on to the geocolor satellite image provided by NOAA, we can see that beautiful bright band of clouds off the US East Coast as dusk begins to cross the Atlantic Ocean. And what's fascinating here in this image is you can see the higher cloud tops illuminated by the sun as it sets. These cloud tops popping in white, which is pretty beautiful. And then you can see this big band of white here across the Gulf of Mexico. Out west, the storm, most recent storm coming in is also quite visible. And you can just barely see the storm expected Monday and Tuesday just offshore. Looking at the enhanced cloud tops, you can see those cloud tops over the US West Coast and the clouds off the US East Coast. With right now the tallest cloud tops getting into the Sierra Nevadas, parts of Oregon and Washington, and then down into the Rockies. Looking at the National Weather Service radar, I just did want to show you the alerts. We've got small craft advisories, looks like gale, possibly gale warnings up for the U.S. West Coast. Let's check that. Gale watches up for the U.S. West Coast. Small craft advisories north, gale watches south. We've got some storms moving in through out the U.S. West right now, with most of the storms having passed the coastline at this time. And then for the U.S. Southeast, we got frost and freeze warnings up as the yet another front dips down. Most of the small craft advisories are dropping off across the Outer Banks and for the Southeast, although a few still up for the Northeast and Florida. Now, getting down to our local observations for waves, as I said before, waves today mostly in the range of 1 to 3 feet across the Outer Banks. So just offshore, right here at Jeanette's Pier, right now, waves in the range of 2 to 3 feet. So actually pretty substantial waves. Relatively choppy with that strong, well, I say strong, fresh north wind coming out of almost due north, which is onshore, an onshore flow at 20 miles per hour right there at the beach. Primary swell at 6 seconds. That swell is a 4.5 foot swell, but not lining up very well with that chop. So only 2 to 3 foot waves breaking right now. And then we have a secondary swell coming in at 13 seconds. This one out of the east northeast, and that one at about 1 foot. Present air temperatures are 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to fall a bit tonight, probably getting down into the upper 30s. And then ocean water temperatures right now at Jeanette's Pier are cold, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So, yeesh, very chilly right now in the ocean. Hopefully that will warm up as we get into the week. The high today was around 46 degrees, going to get down into the upper 30s tonight and be mostly clear. So, heading on down the coastline to Rodanth, um, we've got some smaller waves, not much smaller, but waves in the range of 1 to 2 foot as winds blow out of the north-northwest, which is cross shore, slightly offshore, fresh wind. And then the primary swell coming in at 6 seconds at 4.5 feet, with the secondary swell coming in at 13 seconds out of the east northeast at 1 foot, the primary swell coming out of the northeast. Right now, air temperatures at Rodanth 42 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty chilly down there as well. Ocean water temperatures also rather cold at 50. This is rather colder than it's been in recent weeks. We have had a bit of a cold snap overall across the Outer Banks, but conditions are expected to warm up as we get into next week. High today was likely around 49 degrees Fahrenheit. It is pretty clear right now. Sun's moving towards setting. Just gorgeous. Those of you who are out there enjoying the beautiful skies, you're likely going to be in for a big treat as the sun sets over the sound tonight. Low tonight, getting into the upper 30s, likely around 37 tonight. Okay. And then heading south to Buxton, we're going to provide you guys with our final wave report. Oopsie, I didn't want to do that. So heading on down south to Buxton, on Hatteras Island, Buxton Beach, about here near beach access ramp 43 or the various Hatteras Lighthouse beach accesses. Right now, Buxton getting waves in the range of 2 to 3 feet, so about as large, maybe a little bit larger than up at Jeanette's Pier. Winds are coming out of the northeast. This is a fresh wind at 20 miles per hour. That is an onshore flow. Primary swell coming in at 6 seconds. That is a 5 foot swell, so much larger swell. Still likely a little bit choppy, just based on my earlier observations down at the coast. And then the secondary swell again at 13 seconds, that one at about 1 foot. Present air temperatures 44 degrees, so pretty chilly at Buxton. Ocean water temperatures much warmer, still hanging in there, 59 degrees at Buxton. Buxton is the toastier spot. The high today at Buxton was around 50. And now when I say toasty, not toasty, you're still going to need your wetsuits. And you're still probably going to want a 3-4 millimeter wetsuit. I've been out there surfing in a 2-3, so I'm a little cray. Um, oh my God, I just said cray. All right. Yeah, I'm a little nuts. We'll just erase that from the record. But in any case, it's going to be clear this evening. Another beautiful sunset down there, Buxton, a low 39 degrees. All right, let's get into a little bit of weather and climate observations. We haven't done too much in the way of climate observations, and I'm still going to keep the relative climate observations a little bit brief. But right now we do have a pretty big warm air invasion coming up through the Bering Sea into the Arctic, pushing the coldest air in the Arctic now over Siberia and Greenland and a chunk of the North Atlantic side of the Arctic with a warmer air. It's not warm up there, but warmer air moving up through the Bering Sea. And we do have some colder air sweeping in across the US east and northeast, but not too crazy cold, although colder than normal for March. And then looking at the anomalies map, you can see that colder than normal air over the Mississippi River Valley and parts of the US East, and then that big warmer than normal air mass moving into the Arctic, juxtaposed by a colder than normal air mass over on the Siberian side. It's worth noting that Asia is still much warmer than normal generally, but that the heat there has subsided a bit, the relative heat, and that overall global temperature anomaly is dropping down a little bit, about 0.29 degrees Kelvin if we round a bit above normal, 0.29 degrees Celsius. Kelvin converts directly to Celsius. This running average climatology for the 1981-2010 period, which is already warmer than normal, um, much warmer than normal globe, although not as warm as during recent days. A little bit cooler than normal in the tropics, and Antarctica dipping down to about a half degree Celsius below normal, with the Arctic much warmer than normal, about 0.45 degrees Celsius above normal. All right, so getting down into the lower 48, we do have a opportunity to look at the tendency for stormy weather over the next 7 days. And it looks like California and the US West Coast is again looking out for some stormy weather generally, but not as bad as the previous week. And the atmospheric river seems to have tamped down a little bit. Nonetheless, you could still see some pretty heavy precipitation totals, particularly for southwest California and parts of the mountain regions, and then getting up into British Columbia, parts of the U.S. Northwest and Washington and Oregon. Again, the mountain regions and the higher elevations likely to get more precipitation as well over the next 7 days. And then it looks like there's a potential for some heavy rain, possible severe weather as we get some warm air pushing back against the cold air. And the main battleground coming into focus across Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, apparently, according to the NOAA quantitative prediction forecast. Out offshore, not as much tendency for nor'easters or oceanic storms as we have seen, although still some tendency with some likely heavier precipitation totals. But the big story for me is, oh, I'll talk about that later, actually. Let's go to the convective outlook and talk about severe weather. And it's just worth noting that there's really not much to talk about, at least according to the Storm Prediction Center. No major thunderstorms, um, no major severe thunderstorms. I mean, this doesn't mean thunderstorms are not going to happen or that severe thunderstorms can't happen, but nothing major expected over the next 3 days, which is good news on the severe weather side. And now let's talk about the main weather event for next week. I'm going to go ahead and, or at least the main weather event for the Outer Banks next week. I'm going to go ahead and advance the model. And so you can see this cold high pressure system moving down into the US Southeast. It's going to head on offshore eventually. It's going to linger into Monday and Tuesday. So it's still going to be pretty cool Monday and Tuesday. But then by late Tuesday and into early Wednesday, we do see the high pressure center move off the US eastern seaboard off the mid Atlantic. And with that clockwise circulation around the high, we're going to see warm air, warm, moist air getting dredged up from the Gulf of Mexico and pushed into the southeast and the central U.S. And we're going to see a battle zone start to light up and some stormy weather here for the central U.S. And here for the Outer Banks, it's going to start warming up on Wednesday. And you can see the storms here firing in the central U.S. The storms also moving in across California that are expected, but don't look as intense. Um, and then as we get into Thursday, maybe a little clouds, some rain for the Outer Banks, but nothing too crazy. It looks like most of the weather is going to be off to the north as that high pressure continues to circulate clockwise, bringing in that warm, moist air from the Gulf. So likely 60-degree weather on Thursday here for most of the Outer Banks, maybe warmer. And then into Saturday, I'm sorry, and into Friday, we get another push of warm air fighting against that cold. And you see the battle zone there, possible severe weather in some locations with that warm front pushing over that colder air. So we'll just have to keep a weather eye to that. But here in the Outer Banks, just likely to be warm, maybe a little breezy, but nothing too crazy. Just a very warm and pleasant day. I just want to show you how the severe weather potential pops on Friday with that warm air pushing in over that cold air and a low pressure system. You can see those reds and oranges, so possible severe weather for parts of the east central U.S. running from Texas in an arc across the Mississippi River and Ohio River valleys in the central U.S. And then that starts to try to turn into a front that moves east on Saturday. And so it looks like we might get another major storm for the Northeast as we get on into the weekend. Nothing too crazy for the Outer Banks, but another front looks like sweeping on through and some colder air behind it after a big warm up Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's the major weather forecast news. Now let's look generally at the wave forecast. So for today, right now, we've got waves in the range of 5 feet off the Outer Banks. Looks like 5, yeah, 5 foot, 4.5 to 5 foot swell coming out of the northeast for most of the Outer Banks right now. Not lining up great for most beaches. You might find some beaches where it's pretty decent. And then by tomorrow, the swell is expected to fall down a bit, but line up better to the coastline. So we're going to get 2.5 to maybe 4 foot swell here on Monday. Still going to be pretty cold on Monday, but I think the waves will just be generally more rideable as the air tends to calm down and the ocean tends to glass out a bit. And then into Tuesday, we get this nice swell coming in directly from the east. It's not huge in the range of 2 to 4 feet. So not large waves on Tuesday, but given the angle of the swell, it's likely to be actually a pretty decent day for waves. And then into Wednesday, the swell maintains in that 2 to 4 foot height for most beaches. And just looking at some of the nearshore wave models, it looks like we're going to get 2 to 4, 3 to 4 foot waves. as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, and then into Friday, and I'm going to tease this out into Friday. It does look like by Friday we get a bit of a more of a south wind, which creates that southerly flow for swells. But these look like they will tend to wrap around a bit more, at least according to the nearshore wave model. So we might have some relatively decent days for waves. I mean, nothing too amazing. Doesn't look like crazy barrels or anything. I'm looking at 1 to 2 star, wave forecasts for most of the nearshore waves. So nothing amazing, but nonetheless, some potentially fun days with some warmer weather as we get into mid to late week this coming week. So, all right. Thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, this Sunday, March 19th session. And as I always do, I'm just going to ask you guys to please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy, being wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles, to help defend our beautiful coastlines, our beautiful waves as they break on the coastlines. If the sea level's not stable, your breaks aren't going to be stable, not going to be as predictable, and then if you're dealing with like a warming ocean, it can get kind of nasty. I mean, lots of nasty things can pop up out of a warming ocean. And then in addition to that, for those of us who rely on coral reefs, as you burn fossil fuels being the primary driver of climate change, you acidify the oceans, which is not good for the corals, and nor is the rapid warming of the ocean, which is responsible for all the bleaching events that we've seen around the world. And I'm just going to go ahead and refer you to Terry Hughes, major expert on coral reefs, and listen to what he has to say. He's a climate scientist and also another advocate for clean energy. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, and I will be back with you shortly. I'm going to go ahead and edit this thing because I don't believe